Good evening, everybody. This is Your Nurse Advocate, Conversations with Your Nurse Advocates, and we are with Linda and Pam, and our special guest tonight is Sonya Ackerson. She is owner of the Sonya Group, and we're going to get educated tonight on what Sonya does and what she can do to help our elders. So, Sonya, the floor is yours. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. It's exciting to be able to share how we can actually reach out and help people. I really appreciated Linda's episode on home health care, just highlighting all those things. And it kind of ties right into what we do. So previously to the Sonya Group, I was a financial advisor, and I sold that company and I started the Sonya Group. And so for 11 years, we have been working with families, with home health care agencies, assisted living, nursing homes, to help them figure out when they are needing that higher level of care, not only sometimes where they're going to get it, but how are they going to pay for it. So thankfully, with my financial background, I'm able to understand the financial picture of it. And I learned a whole lot in the beginning and am able to utilize that every day to work with families. So we've literally helped hundreds of families figure out that financial piece. And so we do that. And I know you have some great questions for me. So, but we do that with a relationship-based situation. So we are very hands-on in this process of helping someone figure out how they're going to pay for the care, because I found early on that keeps a lot of people from reaching out for care. They want the care, they need the care, but they just can't figure out how it can get paid for. And so it's an honor to be able to help people get that care and have that peace of mind with knowing that it's going to be paid for.
So Sonya, when you sit down with a client, do you get your clients by referral, or how do you connect with people that might need your services?
So we are 100% referral based, and we get referrals from other families who have utilized our services. We also have relationships with home health care agencies, assisted living, and nursing homes. And so when they know that someone needs the help and they're just struggling with saying, yes, we want to get this help, but we're scared, we don't know how to pay for it, then they will refer them to me to talk to them about what's going on and what are the financials and what direction do we need to go. Do we need to go with private pay? You know, sometimes people can private pay, but they're so scared to do that. Afraid that all their assets are just going to disappear and they're not going to have anything. And even those who are wealthy feel sometimes like, well, where do I take the money from? I mean, this money is supposed to go to my children and so on and so forth. So where do I tap into the money? And then for those who have a shortage of funds, we talk a lot about the Medicaid process and how that can work to come alongside and pay for their care.
So if someone were to, say you get an appointment with someone and you're going to sit down with a new client, what are some of the things, what does that look like? Maybe our listeners, if they have elder parents or that, you know, so they get an idea and not maybe so fearful. What does that conversation look like, and how does that work?
Sure. Well, I'm very interested in who the person is that needs the care. And we're all different. So we all have different personalities. So sometimes we have those that are willing to have care. Sometimes we have those who, like Linda referred to in her segment about no way do they want somebody to come into their home. How are we going to do that? And I learn about what the care, what they need. You know, I have to have a little bit of medical idea of what's going on. And obviously in our world, we see a lot of dementia. And so how is that playing out? And how is the family able to meet the needs or not meet the needs? And so it's really important to get to know the situation. And so we talk about that. We listen to what they want to have happen. I mean, everybody wants to stay at home, but sometimes we just can't, because there's not a family member that can care for them. The funds aren't there for that level of care that they need. A spouse is wore out. So we talk about what level of care they need, and then where could they go for that care, and then how are we actually going to pay for it? And we delve into that financial picture to say, okay, let's talk about what do you have available, and where can that go, and how do we treat all these different assets that people have. And that's how we start that conversation. And we have a tagline: listen, educate, and advise. And so you brought up the very first part, which is just listening to what the goal is and what they want to have happen, and see if we can make that happen.
So, Sonya, when you sit down with a person or a family member, how long does it take? I mean, what does that process look like before you have like an end decision? I mean, what is all involved? How long does it take to put a plan in place?
Well, I would say our initial conversations are usually about an hour, because lots of things come up in that discussion, and I want to really know where they're coming from and what they want. And then we talk about, well, okay, so this is what you can do. I can give you a good example. I have a lovely couple who live in actually a regular apartment complex. So they sold their home, moved closer to their daughter, and they're just in a regular apartment complex, and they're in their early 80s. And it's just not working out, having kids and young adults, around, it's just not working out. And they're starting to need some more care. And so the daughter contacted me from a referral and said, I think we need to meet with the parents. And so I sat with them last week, and we talked about, well, what are they experiencing and what kind of things do they need to have happen? And we pretty much came to the conclusion that assisted living might be a great option for them. They're not really so independent anymore, and so assisted living might be a good option. And we talked about some places that in the area that they might go to. And then we talked about the financial picture, and we're going to have to work really hard on figuring out what we're going to do, because they have great long-term care policies, but they don't kick in for 3 months. So we have to bridge that gap between now and 3 months, and they don't have much money. So I think we're going to end up, probably applying for one of the Medicaid programs that are available that we can use in assisted living. And most of the states have this program. It's called the Home-Based Waiver Program. In Iowa, we call it the Elderly Waiver, kind of short for that long Home-Based Waiver Program. And so that's a good possibility for them to be able to tap into that, and then and help them kind of bridge that gap between now and when their long-term care insurance kicks in. And so that's kind of the process that we go through. And most of the time I walk away needing to kind of sort through all the information they gave me and think of a plan, and come up with some really good sound advice that they can, sink their teeth into and understand. And one of the components of that is educating. So it's really, really important that folks have an understanding of the Medicaid process. And sometimes I hear, well, we're not going to go on Medicaid, or we don't need Medicaid. Well, that could be true for today, but if your care increases and you end up, like say for this couple, end up going to long-term care, that's a significant cost difference. And so we need to understand that Medicaid process, and then it's great if we don't need it right away. But if we do need it, then you kind of understand what you can and cannot do. And so that education piece is huge for the folks that I talk to.
Sonya, with the Medicaid, and I know everybody's situation is different, but is there in looking forward, is there a couple of tips that you could share, that you could say, in trying to look into the future, what should you be aware of, or anything that they could do to pre-plan to make this process go smoother?
Yes, that's a great question. I love to be able to talk to people about before the fact. It's really hard when now the medical situation is very serious and the choices are now going to be limited, and so is the financial picture. So I love talking to people ahead of time. So there's a couple of across the board state to state things that are the same with Medicaid. There's a 5-year look back period in every state except California. California has a 3-year look back. So what that means is that you cannot gift or sell something for less than fair market value if you have the potential of going on Medicaid in the next 5 years. So if yesterday you gave your children $10,000 a piece, and in 2 years you find yourself in a situation where you need Medicaid, they either have to pay that money back or you're going to have a penalty. So there's a 5-year look back in every state except California. That's across the board. The other item is that the qualification is similar in most states. So I'll just pick on Iowa. Iowa, to be qualified to apply for Medicaid, you have to have less than $2,000 in assets. And assets are what your name is on. So there are some exemptions: the house you live in, a vehicle, prepaid funerals, a cemetery plot. That's pretty much it. Those are your exemptions. And so really it gets, from here all the way down to here, where we pretty much end up with a bank account that has less than $2,000 in it. And you cannot apply for Medicaid until you have reached that point, because you will get denied. So that's pretty much, no matter what. I think I came across another state just recently where I think it was 2,500. And I can't think of what, maybe Ohio or something like that. So those limits but they're very similar state to state, that threshold of assets that you're allowed to have.
I know in Wisconsin it is also 2,000. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I hear the most often. So, and I think that's one of the things that, there's a couple things, there's some old wives' tales, right? So-and-so got to do this, and so-and-so told me that their aunt got to do that. And that, I hear this all the time. Well, one of the things we know is things today are not like they were yesterday, right? And so our parents, my grandmother was on Medicaid because she got dementia. And when she was on Medicaid, it was a very different picture than it is today. And so, there's just a lot of old wives' tales, and I spend quite a bit of time talking to people about, no, that's not accurate, or it's close but not quite, and just kind of debunking these myths that are out there. And it always makes me very sad, especially when I have a spousal situation where somebody has said, "Oh, you have to sell everything," and they hear this not just from people or friends, they hear it from attorneys or CPAs or just people who don't really know. They just heard this somewhere, and pretty soon they've sold their house and they're living in an apartment, and they didn't have to do that. And it's just sad. So I spend a good amount of time debunking these myths that are out there.
So Sonya, how do you get paid for your services?
That's a great question. So when I interview with someone and we're talking about the situation, when I'm educating them on the Medicaid process, that is all complimentary. We really don't know where we're headed until that decision is made. And occasionally, if we are in a really crisis situation and it's clear that Medicaid is the answer, then everything happens rather quickly. When we're actually working on the Medicaid process, so we're actually doing everything in that Medicaid process, which includes spending down, and then so we're down less than 2,000, and then when we're doing the application through all the way through the approval process, then that's how we get paid, and we operate on a flat rate. So it just covers everything. I kind of like to say everything from A to Z, and that's how we end up getting paid.
Linda, do you have some questions for Sonya?
Yeah, I have a couple questions actually. You spoke about having this conversation earlier on. When would you recommend that people actually start looking at this? Should this be part of like a middle-aged person, as even though they're still working, looking at this futuristically to have this talk or this understanding of this, putting things in? And that's one question. The other would be, because there's a 5-year look back, what happens with, is it better to put these things in trust earlier than later so that you don't have these issues? And what individuals would you recommend to do that for? Would it even help?
Mm-hmm. Those are two great questions. And I would love if everyone who is kind of middle-aged would start having these conversations and thinking about this. Oh my gosh, that would be fabulous. But, you know, as human beings, we're busy and we don't think about this. And most people, even into their 70s or 80s, never think they're going to end up in a nursing home. That is not going to happen to them. And even to go so far as in assisted living, nope, they're staying put. So it would be wonderful if we were all thinking ahead about what would happen. And the adult children that I work with, because I work with a lot of the adult children, all say, oh my gosh, I'm putting things in order for my kids. I don't want my children to have to go through this. And so it would be great if they did. To protect the assets, there's really only one way, and that's an irrevocable trust. And I'm not an attorney, but I will tell you, in Iowa, if you don't have that irrevocable trust in place for 5 years, it's a countable asset. So I wish, say, for example, farmers would think of this, because I think of farmers because they want their land and their farm to go to the next generation. If they don't make that plan and put that in an irrevocable trust, it most likely will not go to the next generation, or it will at a cost. And I mean by that they're going to have to sell farm to get them through that 5-year look back period. And that's not what they want to have happen. And there are other people, of course, who have other that as well. So I think that sooner rather than later is a good time to about this, and to the attorney, we want to make sure that they do Medicaid on a daily basis, so they're very aware of all the rules and the guidelines that through Medicaid state guides. I think that's a great
Do we still have you, Sonya? You kind of froze up there a little bit. Well, hopefully Sonya will be back with us shortly. Oh, yep, she did. Hopefully she'll be back. But great stuff, you know, that Sonya shared. I mean, you know, all of us really need to look at that, and you know, with that 5-year look back. I mean, that's she's coming back on. That's huge for even people at our age, you know, to look at that and prepare that, so that we, you know, can preserve our legacy for our families. Looks like Sonya's coming back. Are you there, Sonya? Are you there, Sonya? We can see you. Yeah, at least you're frozen now, but with a very nice smile. So
gotta love the internet sometimes.
Yeah, there you go.
We just hang in there. Those technical difficulties, they're just minor. So I hope that answered your question, Linda.
Yes, it did. And it's actually something, you know, that's really, really thought-provoking, because when you think about it, people a lot of times assume that, you know, this, you know, everything will just go to my kids. This won't be a problem. And then all of a sudden they have some type of catastrophic issue that happens and they need a larger level of care. And initially they could start out in their home if they allow that, but either then their home has to have different types of doorways put in or walkways put in, or they have to have things adjusted to meet the needs. And then they move into possibly needing to go to maybe even starting with an independent living or with an RCAC license or CBRF. And then there's a cost to that. There's a cost to extra care. And then they need assisted living and then maybe long-term care and maybe one and then the other. All of those things come up with a cost. And a lot of times they don't want a lot of those other things touched because they've had them set aside as part of the inheritance for their children and not realizing that, well, you may not be able to get other things unless those things are looked at appropriately or dealt with or secured appropriately. So those are very, very good thoughts for people to look at and think through as they walk through these journeys.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think about a catastrophic illness, that could change overnight is someone having a debilitating stroke.
Yes.
If
that too. Yeah.
And that could change your life overnight.
Yes.
And
I think, and I think too, one other issue that I see a lot of is dementia. So even if the family or the spouse is noticing it, dementia progresses. And so especially in a spousal situation, the well spouse, I had a sweet gentleman the other day tell me, I promised to take care of her and I'm going to take care of her. And we had already had a phone conversation about this. So somebody from the local nursing home, even though he's not putting her in a nursing home, but their friends had said, why don't you call Sonya and talk to her? And so we talked and he's like, oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm not ready for this. And I said, you know what? That's okay. But it's good for you to kind of know that you don't have to go broke because the state law protects you. They protect your assets and they protect your income because he was going to sell his house. I'm going to sell my house and okay. No, please don't sell your house. It's an exempt asset. You get to keep your house. Oh, so I said, you know what? I would only leave you with this thought. I'm here for any questions you want. I said, but you know what? Your daughters are bringing up something to you because they're seeing something that you're not seeing. And I said, just try to listen to them. They want the best for you and they want the best for their mom, but they're seeing something or they wouldn't mention it. And when you're right in that situation, it's hard to step back and watch it. So I said, you just call me whenever. By golly, he called me a month later. Well, I think we need to have that talk. And so I got to meet him and his wife, and it was lovely. And even at the table, he's like looking at his wife. He's like, I am going to take care of you. You are not going, you're going to stay right here in this house. And I'm just smiling at him going, I think that sounds lovely. And I got a call today. Now, this was last week, and I got a call today, and his daughters were at his house, and he wanted to talk, and I couldn't talk to them, but something's going on, right? And so you just don't know when that trigger is going to happen. I did want to mention two other things if we have time for that. One of the misnomers is that Medicare is going to pay. So Medicare will pay. And you're all, I know you both know. Medicare does not pay for home health care. I'll qualify that in just a second. Medicare does not pay for somebody to come in 2 or 3 times a week to care for your loved one and bathe them and all that. Medicare does not pay for assisted living. Medicare does not pay for long-term care at a nursing home. They do not pay that. So when Linda did a great job talking about Medicare, getting a doctor's prescription for them to come in a day or 2 a week and do a couple of things, but they're not doing daily cares, if you will, if that's the best way to describe it for our audience. So please remember, Medicare does not pay. The other thing is, I would say one of the issues that we have consistently is life insurance. I know that it's one of the areas that just infuriates me personally, that our government can say your cash value in your life insurance counts as an asset. And so there are many, many times when we have to do something with that life insurance, whether it's transferring it to a funeral home or cashing it out. And there goes the plan to pay for the funeral. So that is hands down the biggest issue we have to deal with before we can apply for Medicaid. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to, visit with them about that, or they can connect with me on my website, thesonyagroup.com, and I'm happy to answer those questions. But it's very sad, and it makes a lot of people mad, understandably so. But we have to deal with the rules and the guidelines of each state's Medicaid program. There you have it.
Yeah, I know that I know that's true because I had to deal with that with my grandmother, my dad's mom. We had to, before she could apply for Medicaid, she had a life insurance policy, and we had to deal with that. So we had to give it to the funeral home, and then they used what they could. I mean, she had very lovely. I mean, she would have loved her funeral. She just would have loved it. Yeah, but then. So, and then the rest, she said, you know what? She said, whatever you need to do with it, if they can give it back to you, what's left after my funeral, if you can get it back as a refund or give it to the church or whatever, do whatever you feel is appropriate. So, but yeah, she was kind of upset about that. I do remember that. It was not something she was thinking about that she had to deal with at all.
Well, in Iowa, and this could be true in your state too, but in Iowa, anything that's left over that's not spent on the funeral goes back to the state of Iowa because it's an asset. And so it goes back to the state of Iowa. So, it's kind of disappointing for the family or for the owner of the policy when they intended that money to go to their beneficiary, their child, their spouse, their grandchild. So it's just one of those really tough conversations.
Yeah, I think she wanted it to go for her bills and stuff like that, and I don't think and I don't think, I don't think she could do that. I'm not quite sure what actually happened with the remainder. All I know, she had a really nice funeral because we had to use it.
You had to use it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Sonya, looks like it's about time to wrap things up. Great. This has been an awesome conversation. And I think this information is going to benefit a lot of people. In closing, is there anything that you'd like to say to wrap this up, or anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to mention real quick? And like you said, the best way to get a hold of you is on your website?
Yes. So you can go to www.thesonyagroup.com, SONYA group.com. And I would just wrap it up by saying, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's better to know now. And that's that question that Linda said, when's the right time? Now is the right time. Just ask questions and find out the truth about how things work. And then you actually can plan accordingly, and you don't get that surprise or that disappointment of now you're in a situation and now we have limited options. So just don't be afraid to ask. It's good to have knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. Linda, do you have anything that you wanted to say to wrap it up, or?
No, just knowledge is power.
It is. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on. Thanks a lot. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.